2 days ago, I recorded a show where I talked about System76's new Cosmic desktop environment, a brand new desktop environment built essentially from scratch in Rust because, of course, that looks like and mimics the current GNOME desktop almost to a T. The differences are extraordinarily minor, but it is built essentially from scratch, anew, not using GNOME's toolkit. I made 2 points in that video. The first point being, why would you do something brand new and make it just look like something else? Why can't you do something that looks really different and interesting? And the second point, pointing out that maybe their time was better spent simply working with GNOME to make any changes they needed, as opposed to going their own route, building their own thing completely from scratch, a la Ubuntu's Unity, which is an endeavor that is more than likely going to lead to catastrophic failure. I would like to say right now, after having thought on it for the last 2 days, that one of those points that I made was completely wrong. One of them, the point about doing something new and please do something that doesn't just look like GNOME, that one still stands. People really need, somebody out there needs to make an operating system GUI, a desktop environment that looks a little bit unique and interesting, because they're all just forming together in one just blob gelatinous mass that is just really, really annoying. I would like to see some uniqueness and interestingness in the desktop environment. So why System76 is choosing to just... I digress. I still hold that point. But my other point, the point that I made where maybe this was a business mistake, maybe this was a misuse of resources to go out and try and recreate their own desktop environment that essentially is the GNOME experience instead of just working with GNOME. And I posited that that was a failure, that was going to lead to failure, that was going to lead to a wasting of resources and ultimately just going back to using GNOME. That was what I was putting forth out there. And I think that was wrong. I think I was missing one of the key motivating factors that is perhaps more motivating and more worthwhile than any other when it comes to just branching out and either forking a project or creating your own version of a project. And that isn't technical issues. That isn't that you want to implement some feature here or feature there. And that isn't even business reasons. I think one of the most key and critical and important reasons to be able to just branch out and do your own thing, even if you're just mimicking and emulating what someone else has done, is simply that you didn't want to work with the people that did it in the first place. GNOME has a track record. They have a reputation of being extraordinarily difficult to work with at this point. So realistically, there is no reason why System76 or anyone else shouldn't just fork GNOME or recreate the user experience of GNOME all by themselves, simply because they either A, can't work with the GNOME development team, or B, just don't want to. That is a perfectly reasonable and valid reason to just say, nah. And you know what? Even if System76's Cosmic desktop environment is statistically going to fail ultimately and be abandoned, so what? Why not? What is wrong? Come on, Londuke. What is wrong? What is wrong with undergoing an endeavor that is unlikely to succeed? All of the really great projects in the world have been unlikely to succeed. I mean, shoot, Linux was unlikely to succeed. It just was. So what? Why not? I mean, the original Macintosh was unlikely to succeed. It had a lot of strikes against it. Doesn't mean they shouldn't have done it. There's a lot of projects that both have failed and have succeeded that should have been tried, no matter how much the cards were stacked against them. And There are way worse reasons to do a project than simply, I don't want to work with the other people that are making something similar. Just a case in point here. There are so many people who are just sick and tired of working with GNOME. Here's an article on GNOME's horrid coding practices. Those are everywhere. GNOME Linux, a complete disaster. Here's one where people are just simply making fun of the fact that GNOME are just forcing touch design onto desktop users, even though there's not really a good user experience for that. Here's people, oh man, you want to find a rabbit hole you could spend an eternity on. Search for GNOME shell extensions breaking. Oh my word, you will find not tens, not hundreds, not even thousands, but I would posit tens of thousands of people who are just like pulling their hair out. Developers, users, everybody who are just like, every time I update GNOME, everything breaks. This is just kind of how it works, right? And on top, look at that guy. Look at that guy in the screen. That's me right there. You can't tell. It's me though. It is amazing how many people don't just want to break away from GNOME because of the technical issues, but because of political issues, because of difficulty in working with individuals. And when I say political issues, the GNOME team gets cranky if you don't have good think. Now, I'm not talking about official GNOME policy, but if you look at some of the main contributors to GNOME and some of the kind of the ancillary contributors to GNOME, there is a community vibe where they just get yelly at anyone who doesn't agree with them, right? Who disagrees with their politics, who disagrees with their social ideas, with all sorts of stuff that has nothing to do with the GNOME desktop. And so those sorts of things come up rather frequently, to the point where it almost seems like that's more of the vibe of the community than anything else. And people who want to work with GNOME to make GNOME what they want, right? To build GNOME extensions, to customize GNOME, they have constantly hit brick walls. I mean, as much as I like to give Canonical a hard time for going down the Unity road, because it was always destined for failure and it failed, right? Realistically, they tried to work with the GNOME team. System76 tried to work with the GNOME team. The Linux world is littered with organizations, companies, and individuals who tried to work with the GNOME team and said, you know what, I can't deal with this. I'm out. GNOME isn't really alone in this regard either. You find similar things with the KDE team as well. I mean, the KDE team is amazing in that they can hold a grudge. If you criticize KDE publicly, you become persona non grata to them, and no matter what you do, they will be pissed at you for decades. I mean, they will blacklist you. They will go after you. I have heard from so many journalists and podcasters and whatnot and YouTubers that have had that experience with KDE. It's just part of their culture. They get angry and they get defensive to an extreme degree, not a little defensive, like angry, I'm going to burn your house down defensive. Like they get intense, right? And so a lot of people I know who are like, yeah, I like KDE. I like the desktop environment. I like Qt as a framework and API. I like that. But they can't work with KDE because of those sorts of issues. I already know there are so many people who are going to go hop on whatever forum and social they can and be like, Linux is wrong about this. He is just a blah, blah, blah. And someone will probably call me a Nazi. That's just how that works. And they're probably from GNOME or KDE when they're doing it. Huzzah. So why not just break free and say, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go over here and do my own thing. You know what? System76 should. They should just break off, and there's no better reason to fork a project or create your own clone of a project than just because you wanted to do it. And the reasoning behind that could very well include, I simply don't want to hang out and talk to those people. Whether it's business, whether it's technical issues you can't overcome, or whether it's just that you just don't like them. Perfectly valid reason. Perfectly valid. You know what? I criticize System76 going it alone on Cosmic. I shouldn't have. They should go for it. Now, along those same lines, I got to point this out. System76's head guy over there that's doing the development is a guy named Jeremy, and he's mean. So, now I'm not saying he's a bad guy, right? Not saying that at all. But he hops on the internet and he spouts off in mean ways, and he says stuff that is extraordinarily offensive, and he attacks people rather viciously, like more so than almost anyone I've ever interacted with. I've had Jeremy on this show several times over the years, and he just goes after people. Now, I think it is fully in his right to do so. It's fine. If he's got opinions, blast him out there. He should not be stopped from having those opinions. Just the same. And he also has extremely strong opinions, not just on political or social issues, which he attacks people on regularly, but he has extremely strong opinions on technical issues in a very narrow worldview focused sort of way. He likes Rust and he likes certain design things, and anything outside of that he doesn't love so much. So I could see System76's Cosmic being essentially in the same boat as GNOME, as being potentially, like, I would be wary of working with their team as an outside contributor or an inside contributor. That would make me like, I don't really want to be involved with that. If I liked what they were building, I would fork it and go my own, or create something new that emulated it, which is exactly what System76 is doing because of their issues with GNOME. Same thing, and that's totally fine. But we do end up in a scenario where we end up with several groups essentially recreating the same thing over and over again, which the problems with that do stand. I mean, there are downsides here, right? The joy of forking is a big one. I love that we can take anything from the desktop environment all the way to the Linux kernel and say, you know what, I'm going to fork it and go my own way. Because of social reasons, because of personality conflicts, because of technical design issues, whatever it is. I love that we can do that. And I encourage people to do that. I think people should do that. But the downsides are still going to be there, even though there are maybe good reasons for doing it. We still have to accept the reality that those resources of rebuilding what is essentially GNOME shell, right? They're rebuilding GNOME shell from scratch. And those are resources that could be put use elsewhere, but they're not, because they wanted to go their own route. Some pluses and some minuses, and I think we just simply have to accept that. Now, while I was wrong to criticize them for doing this, to criticize System76 for going their own route, you know what? God bless them, more power to them, Godspeed, go nuts. I do wish that they would do something new. I feel like this is a missed opportunity. I took another look, because some people said, you know what, you're missing out. You obviously haven't used the Cosmic desktop environment or looked at it really, because it has so many differences to GNOME shell. And so I did. And the differences are astronomically minor. Like the look and feel is all the same. The layout is 99% the same. The workflow is 99% the same, with very minor differences here and there. I mean, there's almost more differences between versions of GNOME than there is between current GNOME and current Cosmic. It's not a big difference. And so I wish that, because the GNOME shell, I think, as many people have pointed out, as this comic points out very, very well, It's not the end-all be-all of desktop user experiences, and that's the user experience that System76 is going for with Cosmic. They're not building a phone touch UI. They're not building a tablet touch UI. They're building something for their laptops and their desktops with their mouse and their keyboard. And the GNOME shell is not designed for that at all. It's just not. It absolutely is forcing a touch-based design that isn't even a perfect touch-based design onto desktop users when, in my opinion, there's better designs, including past GNOME designs that have worked better for keyboards and mice as your input devices, as opposed to touchscreens. So what System76 is doing here is they're putting in a ton of hard work, a lot of resources, a lot of effort, and in the end, their differentiating factors will be minimal between them and GNOME. And I think that's a bummer. That's a missed opportunity. They could be doing something different. They could come out and say, you know what, we're going to take a look at, because they're building their whole own desktop environment from scratch here, right? With their own, with a different toolkit and everything. They could build a UI that looks like anything from current GNOME and KDE to Windows to modern Mac to classic Mac to BOS to GEM to CDE and OS2 presentation manager. They could pick and choose from the best of the desktop metaphor that the last 20, 30, 40 years have provided us and come up with something truly exciting. It wouldn't have to be so radical that you'd make it a hard learning curve for end users, because there's so much that people just simply intuitively understand. If you've got a mouse and you've got a keyboard and there's a menu to click the button, then it brings up a little whoop that has all the applications that you can click on and launch, and you have like a little taskbar or a dock or whatever you want to call it. Everyone kind of knows what that is. Everyone knows the desktop metaphor. And the people that you'd be attracting from other Linux distributions are going to have no difficulty moving to any desktop metaphor-based GUI. And if you're talking about getting people over from Windows or Mac, well, you're already asking them to have a learning curve moving over to GNOME anyway, so why not make it something that's unique, something that's interesting, that pushes the envelope and tries something new, or just try something old and battle-tested that has been tested better than GNOME. Because GNOME, while it has a lot of things going for it, clearly, I'm not alone in thinking there are some distinct design and usability issues here. So System76, to all the people at System76, some of you I know well, some of you I don't know at all, do what you're doing. Make Cosmic. Go your own road. Don't listen to the crazy Lunduk guy from 2 days ago. Listen to Lunduk now. Lunduk reacted wrong. He was wrong on that. You should be going your own road, blazing your own trail. You should take out the machete and you should clear your own path through the brush. But do something cool. Do something interesting. Do something worthwhile. Do something where the GNOME team and the KDE team and all of them stand up and look at it. And even the team at Apple and Microsoft, they look at what you did and they go, wow, that's pretty cool. Man, well, that's been there all along. We could have made our operating system look like that. Why didn't we? You have the opportunity. You've got the design chops. You've got the technical know-how. You could make it happen. You're not, but you could. All right, everybody. So there we go. There's my I was wrong, but I was right, but I was also wrong. Take it or leave it. Feel free to disagree with me wherever you're at. If you're over watching this on, Twitter or Rumble or YouTubes or wherever, you're doing it in the wrong spot, head on over to lunduk.locals.com. That's where all the good stuff happens. That's where everything happens without any commercials. If you support me over there, it helps keep the lights on here at the Lunduk Journal and make sure that we don't have any influence from any tech company ever and the opinions here are 100% my own and never influenced by any other tech corporation, which is pretty darn cool. So thank you to all the subscribers that helped make that happen. You've kept the Lunduke Journal fully independent all this time, and I hope you will for years to come because you're awesome. All right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes, I do declare, end broadcast.